Welcome once again to the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Wednesday, December the 4th? December 5th. The 5th.
Fourth.
Boy, does time fly. December the 4th. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. We're here for another episode. And look, be honest with you, it's a 4-8 team against a 2-10 team this week. I'm not sure there's too much on the field intrigue. We will talk about the Saints-Giants game on Friday, but we decided to have a little bit of fun today. Rod, it was actually your idea. Today's National Signing Day for college programs. So we decided to go back and kind of take a look at some Saints and what their signing days were like, specifically the guys who are, the big-time 5-star, top 10 in the country recruits.
Yeah, it's always fun to kind of look back at recruiting and how guys were rated, and some guys panned out and lived up to the hype. Some guys weren't rated high and ended up, succeeding. So it's just always fun because these ratings, at the end of the day, they really don't mean anything at the high school level because players respond to them different ways.
Yeah, just to that point, the Saints I think this is their current 53-man roster. I didn't actually match it up man for man, but they had 6 former 5-star recruits, 13 0-star recruits. A couple of those are international guys, but that just goes to show you don't have to necessarily be. That's the old cliche. Anybody can make it.
Well, and you pretty much are guaranteed to have a couple 0 stars, the long snapper and kicker punter. But either way, yeah, I mean it's always interesting how this works because you see guys who thrive in the NFL. Rashid Shaheed, for one. Goes to Weber State. I can't imagine he was. Did you look him up? Was he like a 2-star?
Well, he's not on the 53, so I didn't. But
it's those sort of things where they've done a good job of finding impact players from small schools, and you see guys from small schools thrive in the NFL all the time. Darius Leonard, Tariq Cohen. You see it with the Saints and guys like
Taysom Hill.
Shaheed and Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is a pretty big recruit.
He might have been a
He's
3-star.
recruited by Stanford.
3-star recruit.
But it shows that that stuff matters to get into college and to do all that. But once you get there, it's a completely different animal. And I think you're seeing a lot more of it now too, with the transfer portal being what it is. A lot of guys coming up from smaller schools to bigger schools to make their profile bigger for the NFL. So it matters, but it doesn't matter much after you get on campus, I think.
I want to let you know first that Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who take the time to know the community and to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. One thing we are going to get to, and again, we record these Wednesday mornings before we get any injury reports, practice reports, anything like that. But a couple of transactions the Saints have already made, and this is our transaction segment, proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. Saints signed Sincere Haynesworth, and I'm blanking on the other guy they signed to the practice squad today. Bradford.
Millard Bradford.
Millard Bradford.
Yep, safety.
And they Jacob Caboti, the running back, was waived. That's probably just the first couple of what's going to be several moves. We expect Taysom Hill to go on IR this week. Kendra Miller could come back. Bob Means could come back. So it might be a busy week.
Yeah. I think the Jacob Caboti being waived is probably a sign that Kendra Miller, they're feeling pretty good about his prospects. I think they're going to have like a little bit of a running back jumble there. Jordan Mims, Jamal Williams, and Alvin Kamara are currently on the 53. I doubt they keep 4 going into the game. The Haynesworth thing probably makes sense because of Nick Saldiveri might be potentially another guy going on IR. In fact, I would anticipate he's going to be going on IR. I think we're going to have more moving pieces on the roster this week than we've had in recent weeks.
Obviously, Taysom is the big one. He's out for the season. We got confirmation of that on Monday. Jeff, you wrote a column about it saying, it's possible, and I don't think any of us hope this is the case, but it's certainly possible when you have a guy who's older, who's starting to get more injuries in his career and has a serious knee injury like this, you start to wonder what the NFL future is for Taysom.
Yeah, I don't think, that knee injury was, we don't know the total extent of it, but for anyone that age, whatever position you play in the NFL, it's not good. but especially the one position that Taysom plays, where he's technically a tight end, but he's kind of a running back at this point in a lot of ways. The way they use him, and a guy that's got a growing family. If you've talked to Taysom Hill like we have over the years, I mean, he obviously enjoys football, enjoys being part of a team, but I don't think he's like totally in love with it. I think he knows it allows him to provide for his family. But guys wired like him, I think, could have a bigger picture in mind down the road. I mean, he could go into media. He could do a lot of things, I think. So it wouldn't shock me. I mean, none of us know. I mean, I'm sure they'll make that decision way down the road. But with the state of the Saints, I think that also plays into it. They're looking at maybe a multi-year transition. I know you can turn things around quickly in the NFL, but you got a new head coach on the way, probably someone that doesn't know Taysom Hill. I think there's a lot of factors that point to that being a big question mark about his future.
The one thing I would say about it is this is really just boils down to what Taysom Hill wants to do. Because if he wants to continue playing, if he doesn't want to go out the way he went out this year, there's zero doubt in my mind he is like the kind of person who like attacks the rehab, comes back before on the earlier side of the recovery timetable, and is ready to play in whatever capacity he can play in. If he wants to do that, I've zero doubt that he would be that guy. But like Jeff said, Saints are a team that is probably heading for at least some sort of a transition roster wise. He's got no guarantees left on his contract. They still have a lot of the prorated bonuses that they'd have to account for if they were to cut loose. But I think if Taysom Hill wanted to keep playing, he would find a home somewhere, Denver. But again, I think that's just up to him.
And I think you make a great point about like the rehab. It's one thing for you and I to come back from a knee injury like that and just try to get back, live your life. And it's another thing for an NFL player. Like that's a whole different level of rehab that requires intense commitment. And you're right. He definitely will do it. He's done it throughout his career, but does he want to keep doing that?
Right.
And he's probably made, generational money so far, So those are the decisions NFL players have to make all the time. But I think it's definitely more of a question now than it would have certainly been 3 years ago for
sure.
Taysom.
And Rod, I think if this is it for Taysom in a Saints uniform anyway, I got to give credit to the fans rising to the occasion and kind of doing the Taysom chant as he was carted off the field. He waved to him. It was a moment, I think, that showed how much they appreciate this guy.
Yeah, definitely deserved it. Even before the game, they introduced the players, and I mean, Taysom's a guy that they saved, towards the end. I mean, I think the last three was Taysom, Carr, and then Alvin, who, Alvin's probably the most beloved player on this franchise, but Taysom's right behind him. I mean, he gets a roar every time they introduce him, and I mean, he's a guy that's going to be in the Saints Hall of Fame, when his career is over, because he's just done that much and just done everything they asked him to do, and just been just such a big part of what this team's tried to do for the past few years. So he definitely deserved that. And as they carted him off, I mean, I kind of said, this might be it for him. So we'll see. I mean, like Luke said, it's going to just come down to what Taysom wants to do. But if he wants to play, he'll be back. And if he doesn't, I definitely understand if he shut it down.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's just bruised and banged up every single week. So we'll see if he wants to keep doing that with his life. Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent retail grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. Okay, we're going to take a break, and then we will get into our signing day game. I'm going to have these guys try to guess the 6 5-star recruits on the Saints roster. Some of them are pretty easy, but we'll see if they can get all 6 right after this.
Nice bike.
Thanks. Can I get it back before Saturday?
That might be tough.
Whoa. Is it just you?
For now, let's take a look.
Hi, strawberry mango. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Thank you. I'll take another one.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Okay, welcome back. I spent some time last night, this morning, going through old recruiting rankings. I use 24/7 Sports composite rankings. I know there's, a guy could be 5-star on ESPN or Rivals, but not on 24/7 or vice versa. So I use the 247 composite rankings for this. They kind of combine all of them. 6 guys on the Saints' current roster are 5 stars. This is their current roster, so it doesn't include IR guys. Although you were asking during the break, Luke, I don't think any of their guys on IR. Chris Olave was a 4-star. He'd be the closest one. So let's see, before we dig into the 6 and kind of who their college choices were, if you can guess all 6 24/7 composite 5 stars on the Saints roster. Throw them out there.
Okay, Brian Brzee.
Brian Brzee is one.
Chase Young.
Chase Young.
Chase Young.
Those are only 2 that I came up with off the top of my head.
And those are the top 2. They were
Okay.
both top 10 recruits in the country.
Alvin Kamara.
Alvin Kamara was one.
Okay, this is where it starts to get a little bit harder.
3 more.
Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Kool-Aid was one.
Oh, that's good, Luke.
Okay, this is gonna be tough here. Wasn't Pete Werner?
He was 4-star, I believe.
Yeah.
Went to Ohio State.
I'm going with one of the linemen. I'm not sure if I'm going with Ruiz or McCoy. I'm
Oh,
gonna go with McCoy.
Ruiz.
Cesar Ruiz was
Yeah,
the number
yeah,
one
he was-
center in
he's
the
the number
country.
one center in the country, that's right.
5-star recruit.
Okay, we got one more.
Not McCoy.
No,
Not McCoy. McCoy's actually a 3-star. He was lower.
Yeah,
Landon Young.
no,
Not Landon Young.
He was a big recruit.
He was. I can't remember if he was 3 or 4.
Oh, Spencer Rattler.
Spencer Rattler. All right, we got all. I think Luke carried the weight on that one.
He did.
Although you did get Ruiz. Okay, so those are the 6. Let's go through them real quick. The 6th, reverse order here. The 6th highest one. He was the number 1 center in the country, but only number 47 recruit overall. This was in 2017. It was Cesar Ruiz. Cesar's from New Jersey. He went to IMG Academy.
That's right.
For his last 3 years of high school, and so his other
I think it was his last 2 years.
his other college choices were Florida, Florida State, and Auburn were the other finalists with Michigan. So he decided to go back up where it was cold. Do you guys think there were Caesar had any Michigan Ohio State bets with? Would he be gutsy enough to do that with
Oh yeah,
he
100%.
sure did,
Olave or Chase Young?
He
Yeah.
probably made some money.
Yeah,
He
I
made
mean,
some money
you got to
this
get
year.
odds this
They
year.
were 19.5 point underdogs.
Yeah.
He's like an irrationally confident guy. I remember talking to him last year during Michigan's playoff run. Like, I don't know about Michigan. He's like, we're obviously going to win it all. Like,
So this is preseason.
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
all over.
They beat them, 4 out of 5 now? 3 out of 4?
3 out of-
3 out of 4?
No,
I think 3
4 out of
straight,
5
3
or-
straight, 3
4 out
straight.
of 5 or 5 out of 6 or something like that.
4 in a row.
It's a 4 in a row?
I think it's 4 in a row now.
Well, that's why they're all after Ryan Day right now.
And Ryan Day is like only lost 1 Big Ten game in his entire career, not to Michigan, but he's like 0-4 against Michigan.
That's the only one that matters for the most part.
Okay, so it just goes to show you he was the number 1 center in the country, and now obviously he plays on an NFL offensive line with a guy who's one of the top centers, but he's moved to guard. I mean, it just goes to show you, like, centers in high school aren't that. He was number 1 center, number 47 overall, not that highly regarded. But if you're an athlete, recently on the cover of Sports Illustrated for being a good athlete, you can go far.
Yeah, and I remember when he was drafted, that was like the big question because they drafted him after McCoy's rookie year, and everybody's like, is he a center or a guard? And Sean Payton's like, I don't know, we'll play him somewhere, And he struggled early because he was at guard, and it was really kind of unfamiliar to him. He played a little bit of center after McCoy got hurt, but yeah, I think he's found a pretty good groove at guard. He's a pretty good player, not like I'm probably not even a top 10 guard when you're thinking of left guards, right guards in the NFL, but he's upper echelon.
And
He's a fringe Pro Bowl
I mean, there's
player.
value. We talk about this with Derek Carr sometimes. There's value in just being an average NFL player at your position.
Well, he's above average.
An average NFL starter, I should
I think
say.
he's above average. Yeah. He's in the upper tier, just he's not like a star guard. But like I think he's a good player, and that's why they signed him to a 4-year extension. He's making north of $10 million a year. It's pretty good for an interior offensive lineman. I think he's definitely a lot better than he was earlier in his career, and he's turned into a pretty good player for him.
Okay, the 5th highest ranked recruit on the Saints roster. He was number 42 in his class. This is back in 2013. Although he was the number one all-purpose back. I was surprised that he was this low overall, but it was Alvin Kamara, who is from the Atlanta area. His recruitment was all over the place. He chose Alabama and then eventually transfers to Tennessee. But he chose Alabama on signing day, Georgia, Auburn, Nebraska, and then the one that caught my eye, he feels like an Oregon guy. Like you could see Alvin Kamara going to Oregon.
I have him fit in wherever he went.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, his
Well, would Alvin fit in Nebraska?
he went to the JUCO in Kansas at some point.
Yeah, he went to JUCO after Alabama.
Yeah, he went to
So, I
Hutchinson,
mean,
and he was.
He'd be okay.
But you ever heard Alvin talk about Hutchinson?
I haven't, but
I don't think
mean,
Alvin would have fit in Nebraska.
Hey, Alvin fits in the NASCAR, man.
That's right. That's right.
What was Alvin's line about Hutchinson?
I don't think I can repeat it on this podcast, but it was
We don't have the explicit.
about how boring and terrible it was,
It would definitely be boring.
and like how he didn't like go to practice. He'd just show up for games and run for 200 yards, and dip out.
I mean, remember, like he went to Bama with like Derrick Henry and
Yeah,
forgot what was the back's name that was at Arizona for a while, just a few years ago, and Arizona
see there
Cardinals.
Josh Jacobs too.
No,
Totally blanking.
No, but I mean, there were literally 4 or 5 NFL players.
Right. He was
And he
there
was
with
just
all the
caught in a
studs.
numbers game.
So he goes to Tennessee, and he wasn't actually super productive at Tennessee. But
No.
I think that's one
Well,
of the.
they used Jalen Hurd over him
Yeah.
at
Right.
Tennessee. He was like their third down back, Tennessee, but he was like doing the stuff he did basically as a rookie in the Saints.
I actually think one of the things that's helped Alvin is that he didn't get hundreds and hundreds of carries in college because that you only get so many as a running back.
Right.
So
He's getting them now.
yeah, he stayed fresher.
He's making them for it this year.
All right, the number 4 ranked recruit on the Saints roster. This is Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's from New Jersey, and was the number 1 cornerback in the nation, number 18 recruit overall. He had
Kool-Aid's
offers.
not from New Jersey.
He's from Alabama. I
I'm
think.
sorry,
He
I
might
have
have been
the wrong-
born in Jersey or something like that.
Yeah,
He's not-
I think I
he's
have the wrong.
He's born
note
and
here.
raised in Alabama.
He's an
Yeah.
Alabama guy.
You listen to him talk, you're like, there's no way this guy's from Jersey.
And he had interest from basically every school in the SEC, which if you're from Alabama and you're a top 20 recruit, of course you would. But his finalists included Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Clemson.
So he didn't even consider Mississippi State, huh? Just wasn't even on.
I think he was on the list, but it's one of those things where
He took
24/7
one
list
visit to Starkville. He's like, nah.
the list who recruited him, and I don't think Mississippi State had him. I don't think it was ever serious enough.
Okay.
He had enough cowbell in his life.
All right.
Sorry, Rod.
It's okay.
But,
Can't get them all.
Yeah, clear. I don't know
Can't get
why I
them
had
all.
New
You
Jersey
need like
in
a
there, but
big booster like Rod to go get him involved, man.
he clearly was an Alabama kid going to stay in the Southeast. I still remember one of my favorite things about Vern Lundquist on the SEC Game of the Week is how he would just relish some of these names. There's Kool-Aid McKinstry making the tackle.
Or if you're Dennis Allen, Jaquincy. Dennis Allen refused to call him Kool-Aid for a while after he was drafted.
That feels like a sign that Dennis Allen
Maybe.
could, I don't know.
Maybe
Maybe
he
asked for it. Yeah,
maybe he
maybe.
heard me making fun of how he said Kool-Aid though. Kool-Aid. It's like KOO''LAID. Kool-Aid.
It's definitely one of the better nicknames, I think, in Saints history.
Vern's favorite was
know?
Ha Ha Clinton Dix, but Kool-Aid's right up there too.
Yeah, it's a great name. We need more nicknames that's kind of phased out.
Just come up with
age.
some, man. That's your next column.
I'm just saying, man, it phased out. There's like old nicknames galore.
Jeff the Rocket Duncan.
I mean, the Beer Man was a good one for Michael Lewis. Fast Freddie McAfee, I can think of. But the old days, man, you had all kinds of great ones. Like,
Billy White Shoes Johnson.
well, yeah, I'm thinking of like Saints. Like, God, I'm trying to think of the first. There was some crazy ones on that first team.
Today, too many nicknames are
1967.
like Derek Carr's nickname is DC. It's like, come on, man, we got to get creative.
That's what I'm saying. There's like boring.
They're letting the players come up with these nicknames.
Drew
They need to
Brees.
That's right.
All Drew
Let
Brees
the
would
creatives
do
do it.
would put a Y on the end of your name, like Sprolsey, or Cooksey, Brandon Cooksey. I mean, he had no imagination. Whereas like Billy Kilmer, his nickname was Furnace Face because he'd go get drunk on the quarter. When he drank, his face turned red. Furnace Face is a good nickname.
Furnace
The
face.
Cajun Cannon was actually a good
Yeah.
nickname, I thought, too.
Let's come up with something for the next pod.
Let's do it. That sounds like a good pod for if the Saints go to like 5 and 10 and they're just playing out the string. We can come up with some nicknames
I
on
think
podcast.
Bink's a good nickname.
Yeah, Deuce.
Yeah,
Deuce is a good
Deuce
one.
McAllister.
Deuces, yeah.
Do you all know Deuce's real name?
Deloimus?
I don't know how to pronounce it, but
Delimus.
it's
Delimus. Yeah, I would go by
That's
Deuce.
why
too.
you go by Deuce.
That's right. All right. Number 3 ranked recruit on the Saints roster. Luke, you got him. He's from Phoenix. He was the number 1 pro-style quarterback in the country. Number 11. I actually thought he was higher than this. Number 11 recruit overall, Spencer Rattler. He chose Oklahoma over Alabama and Notre Dame. And I think this is one reason why the Saints fans got so excited about this guy. Hey, he was a number 1 quarterback recruit in the country. He's got to be good. And he just maybe he'll get there one day, but in college certainly was not the number 1 quarterback in the country.
Well, I mean, he started out pretty great at Oklahoma. It's just then he started to struggle, and there was just a guy named Caleb Williams behind him. So I still think I'm still pretty high on Spencer's future as a pro quarterback. I mean, I'm not saying he's ever going to be like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but I still think he has potential to be a starter. He was in a bad situation the 3 games he was starting here. So I still think there's some juice there, but maybe the hype has slowed a little bit around him, which is probably good.
The agenda's taking a little hiatus.
I think it's really
nickname.
hard for anybody to make it in the NFL, but when you come out with it as a number 1 quarterback, it's just those expectations are really hard to reach. And some guys do and some don't. I mean, we still don't know. I mean, Arch seems like he's going to pan out at Texas, I assume, but you just never know how those things are going to turn out.
Yeah, and Rattler had the added, he grew up in the Netflix age. He was on the documentary. I mean, he kind of probably didn't look great on that documentary. A lot of people said this guy's arrogant, and he's not. And so
He grew up in the Netflix age before they got people around these kids to polish them before that stuff.
Yeah, and so then everything you do is under a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Every pick you throw, every time you yell at a teammate, anything like that, the entire world notices. So that's kind of what I think Spencer's dealing with.
When you look around, you see it happen a lot at the quarterback position where guys don't pan out. I mean, they transfer, and it's the transfer portal is littered with highly rated quarterback prospects that don't make it. I mean, it happens every year. So I think that position of all positions is the hardest because of the pressure and the expectations. I've talked to Drew Brees about he was barely recruited at all at the Division I level. I think Kentucky came in at the last minute. He was going to go to either to Brown or Kentucky, and then Purdue offered him, and he went to Purdue. But that was it. And he was at a powerhouse program in Texas, hotbed football recruiting, and got overlooked, didn't even get offered at all, didn't give a sniff from Texas, and he played in Austin.
Yep.
So stuff happens, man.
Yeah, it's that you look at take Baker Mayfield, for instance. He's a number 1 pick in the draft. He's had a good bit of success in the NFL. He was a walk-on, Texas Tech, before he got to Oklahoma and made his career. I mean, like this stuff happens. The 2 best quarterbacks in LSU history, 2 Heisman Trophy winners. I mean, they were big recruits and went to Arizona State and Ohio State. I think it's probably his 4-star players, but they kind of never found a footing there, and they ended up going to LSU and setting records, being top 5 draft picks.
Patrick Mahomes was not a huge recruit.
Not at all.
Went to Texas Tech.
Right. It's really hard to judge which quarterbacks in high school are going to be good college quarterbacks, and it's even harder to judge which college quarterbacks are going to be good pro quarterbacks. It's like the most difficult question to answer in sports, probably.
Yeah.
And it just so happens to be the most important one, which is why it's probably so hard.
And it's that one position where there's only one quarterback that started on the team. It's not like if you're a tackle, you can play left tackle or right tackle. There's only one quarterback and not a lot of spots. So, I mean, if you go to a bad situation, you end up transferring or getting lost in the shuffle.
And the stakes are high, too.
Yeah.
Especially in the NFL.
A lot of college coaches look when you need to get a quarterback, a highly rated quarterback in every single class, because whoever loses out on the job is probably transferring in this day and age, and then you don't have any depth. And so you need to continue to replenish. And kids will sit around for a year or two waiting to become a starter, but they're not going to sit around for
Unless Garrett Nussmeier.
I was going to say, we see it play out right now at Tulane, where Ty Thompson was a really highly rated prospect out of Phoenix area, goes to Oregon, loses the starting job, comes in to Tulane, is expected to be the heir apparent to Michael Pratt, and gets beat out by Darian Mensah, who no one recruited. Idaho State was the only other offer he had out of California, and he's clearly a better player. So these stars sometimes. I see it a lot on the Hall of Fame committee every year when we're, deciding on the Hall of Famers. more often than not, it's players that weren't highly recruited. I mentioned Jason Taylor earlier. Jason Taylor went to Akron, and he was from the Pittsburgh area, so it wasn't like he was from an area, but he was a late bloomer and goes to Akron and blows up and is now in the Hall of Fame. That's more often the case. And what ends up happening, going back to the conversation with Breeze, is he says when you're not recruited as highly, you keep working. You have a chip on your shoulder. So when you get to the NFL, you're not just satisfied with getting there. And I think that's definitely true. In the case of LaDainian Tomlinson, he was like a fullback that no one really offered at a high level. He goes to TCU and is one of the great running backs of all time.
To TCU before TCU was TCU.
Right. Yeah. So I could just go down the list. I mean, there's just so many of them that we see. It's the same case over and over. Very rarely is it a 5-star superstar. I mean, Julius Peppers might be an exception like that, but for the most part, it's guys like Breeze that slip through the cracks and still have that chip on their shoulder at the NFL level and keep driving.
Absolutely. All right, we owe you one more break. Let's take that now, and then we're going to talk about the 2 guys on the Saints roster who were top 10 recruits and did pan out to make it into the NFL. Okay, welcome back. Time to talk about the 2 top 10 recruits on the Saints roster. And it's funny, you look back at these years, and one was 2020 and the other was 2018, and you're looking at some of the guys around him. We're talking about Chase Young and Brian Brzee, and neither one of these guys is an absolute superstar. Neither one of them is all-pro, anything like that. But you look at some of the other names around him, and you go, man, I don't even remember that guy in college. Like, even as a top 10 recruit, the rate of hitting and making it as an NFL starter is pretty low. It's pretty amazing. So Chase Young is the second highest rated recruit. He was the number 7 rated recruit in the class of 2018.
From the Maryland area?
From the DC. Both of these guys actually from the Maryland side of the DMV. And he had Alabama, Maryland, Miami, Michigan, Penn State. Ended up going to Ohio State. And here's a guy who, as the number 7 recruit, became maybe the best college player in the country. I mean, he was phenomenal at Ohio State.
Yeah, absolute game wrecker. And he looked like he was on that trajectory too. What was the number 2 pick?
Number 2 pick behind. I'm trying to. Oh, it was Burrow. It was 2019 draft.
Yeah.
2020 draft. 2020 draft.
I mean, he looked like his rookie year. I mean, absolutely destroyed games. Defensive rookie of the year. You wonder if he would have stayed on that trajectory if not for the injuries. I mean, if he would have stayed on that trajectory, he never would have been here signing a 1-year, $13 million deal. But it's unfortunate. He's dealt with injuries pretty much every year of his career. He's played in every game this year, but he was on the PUP to start training camp, and it sucks because what he was in college was somebody who outside of the whole quarterback conversation, you're like, that's probably the best player in this draft. And then he proved it his first year in Washington. It just didn't pan out from there.
Were any of the guys ranked ahead of him in his recruiting class, like notable? Was any?
I don't have the whole thing. I'm sure there was a couple, but like most of them were. Again, there's like a few guys in the top 5 every year. You're going, man, whatever even happened to that guy?
I was just wondering, was there like one big name in it?
You still see flashes with Chase Young, though. Even this last week, you saw it a couple times. Like I remember turning to Jim Derry, who sits next to me in the press box, and saying, "We haven't called Chase Young's name all day, and then 2 straight plays, he gets a sack and a quarterback hit to cause an incompletion." He still shows those flashes.
Yeah, I mean, he had some guy saying that he'd get 15 sacks this season. So.
How was he at 14? What was he at right now?
14 more is what he needs.
14 since the start of last year, maybe. Yeah, but I mean, he is still got that potential in him. I don't. What's his future,
though,
man? Is he going to be on another rent a deal next year? You think?
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he's back here.
Yeah, I think probably another 1-year deal or short term deal, kind of prove it thing. I think he's been good. He obviously belongs, right? But I just don't know if. Okay, here's the other guys around him.
2018 recruiting class.
It's actually 2017.
2017,
class.
27. I might have the year wrong.
Number 1 was Walker Little. He was offensive tackle. I think he might have been a first-round pick or second-round pick, but he didn't really pan out in the pros. Jalen Phillips, pretty good defensive end, went to Miami. Alex Leatherwood, flamed out in the NFL. He was a first-round pick, but he was like a big reach by the Raiders. Trey Smith from Jackson, Tennessee. AJ Epinesa, pretty good player for the Bills. Cam Akers, bounced around the league. Foster Sarrell, I have no idea who he is. Najee Harris is number 9. Baron Browning, number 10.
That's a pretty good list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I mean, a lot of
decent hit
guys
rate.
made it to
no
the NFL.
superstars, but yeah, some
Caleb
NFL
on
players.
Chason, Jeff Okuda, 11 and 12. So
Yeah, that's pretty good accuracy.
There are people that'll make an argument that Cam Akers is like the best high school player, other than like Marcus Dupree to ever come out of Mississippi. So
yeah, no, I remember his
Really?
recruitment. Yeah,
Yeah.
Because wasn't LSU like really solidly in the mix
Yeah,
for him,
yeah,
and then he
they
ended up going to FSU instead.
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Like, just look at a guy like Leonard. Like, I think Leonard Fournette, considering the expectations and what I thought, I think he was disappointing as an NFL player.
I agree.
I mean, I thought by his sophomore year at LSU, remember when he was making a Heisman run?
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was going to end up being a multi-time All-Pro.
Yeah.
Like, just
But that's a good point because, like, when you have those expectations put on you, and we were talking during the break about Jakeem Stewart, who's about to commit. Everybody expects you to be a star in college, an all SEC player or all American player. Then they expect you to be a first round draft pick. Then they expect you to excel in the NFL to the point where Leonard Fournette, who had a solid career, if not spectacular, you're a disappointment. And it's like, man, the margins are so fine. Like, it's hard to deal with those expectations.
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially now in this current day and age when you've got money tied into it too.
Sure.
Well, money that's out in the public spaces.
Yeah, that was my first year moving to New Orleans, covering high schools at the time, and that senior class was Fournette, Malachi Dupree, Speedy Noel, Gerald Willis. All those guys were like, you thought they were going to be, first round draft picks, and Fournette was really like the only one that really panned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that just
And
goes to show.
Jamal Adams was the other one that LSU fans are going to remember. There's all 5 of those 5-star guys LSU was in on the mix on. I remember going to cover the Under Armour All-American game, I
Yeah.
think it's called now.
Yeah.
All 5 of those guys were there, and only 2 of them committed to LSU, and everybody was freaking out. But Speedy Noel, I don't think he ever played it down in the pros. Gerald Willis, out after a couple years. Who's the other one?
Malachi.
Malachi was in
Malachi
the
Dupree,
league, but he
if-
never made it.
Well, if he didn't get hurt at LSU or
Injuries are the other
in
part of
Green
this.
Bay, I might. But he had like just kind of a okay career at LSU. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, the top-rated recruit on the Saints roster was also the number 1 player in the country in 2020, and that is Brian Brzee. He went to Clemson, and this is probably a good example of this, where he's become a solid NFL player. I don't know that he's lived up to number 1 player in the country potential, but he's also a guy who I think we still see kind of growing.
Yeah,
Yeah, just year 2 for him. I think there's plenty of potential in him. I think he could really blossom and be that kind of guy. So yeah, it's kind of early to write his story right now, but I think he's on the right path.
he was another guy who dealt with injuries in college.
He lost a whole year, didn't he?
Most of a year. Like I think he played in the first game and got hurt, and then like that kind of affected him his last season. That's why he was probably available at the end of the first round. But he was really, really good as a freshman, and he's one of those guys who I think at the NFL level is incomplete. He does one thing pretty well. It's rush the passer. But like he really needs to improve in the other area of the game that is super important, which is defending the run. That's why you've seen him lose snaps and playing time, because it's been a weakness for him. I think a clear weakness for him, and it's hard for him because he's a number 1 recruit in the country because he's 6'5" and 300 pounds. But like it's a hard length to play at defensive tackle and a defensive interior in the NFL. So like he's definitely got some big time traits that we've seen. I mean, he's leading the team in sacks right now, 6.5 on the season, but he's definitely not there as a run defender yet, and that's why like maybe if he never gets there, we'll never see truly how good he can be.
Yeah, I think those big men too, you have to be patient with because We see it all the time, man. These guys, 2 or 3 years, just kind of treading water, and then they really blossom. And I think he's definitely got that potential. I mean, they'd be smart, and I'm sure they are, to let him continue to develop, because I think you can see just even gradual improvement in him.
Yeah, not everybody's Aaron Donald right away. It's just
It's really hard. It's really hard. And especially as Jeff was bringing up, like playing on the interior, and he's a young guy too, right? I think he was only like 20 for much of his rookie season.
Right.
I mean, that's like big man, grown man football in there. You know, it is a really hard position to come in and just like dominate right away. Whether you're talking about interior, offensive or defensive line. You see those guys kind of struggle earlier in their careers. So he needs to continue building and developing, obviously. But like you can see the stuff that could make him a potentially special player.
Look at Jalen Carter. He came in, was pretty much viewed as a disappointment last year in Philadelphia, and that guy's like a massive.
He's a monster now.
Talent, and he's blown up this year. No one's saying he's a disappointment anymore, but it took him a while. It was a transition.
All right. On the flip side, I did want to mention a couple of guys who 24/7 in their composite rankings had as 0 stars. They did not have a rating. And some of them are, kind of obvious, like Trevor Penning, who went to Northern Iowa. If you're getting FCS offers, there was Nathan Shepard, who's from Canada, Jordan Howden, and Will Harris, who both ended up going to Power 5 schools, Minnesota and Boston College, but they did not have, they had to kind of be the last guys in the class, and no fans are getting excited about that guy. Ollie Udo went to Elon, and then there were 2 who did not even have profiles. I mean, they didn't even have, like, 24/7 didn't even bother to go back and make them a profile. And that's Adam Prentice, who I actually watched play in high school in the Fresno area. He was also like a state runner-up in wrestling. Good athlete.
That's surprising. Yeah, I'm surprising about it.
Yeah, and he went to Colorado State and then later transferred 1 year to South Carolina. And then the other one who didn't even have a profile, only had 1 offer out of high school in the Chicago area, is Colin Saunders, who went to Western Illinois. So again, we started with this and we can end with this. It doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, obviously, if you're a 5-star recruit, you're probably a really good player who's going to get a lot of opportunities, but that's not the only path.
Yeah. I think the transfer portal has actually been good in that regard, in that like we're seeing now guys come from smaller schools and play at Power 5 programs, and for years you'd always hear, well, that guy can't play at the SEC level, and then we're seeing right away. Like I just saw what's the corner for LSU?
Zay
Alexander.
Zay Alexander, right?
Yeah.
Southeastern. Am I wrong about that? Where did he transfer?
I think
from?
that's right. Yeah.
Southeastern Louisiana, and now they're projecting him as like a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, Kyron Lacey came from Lafayette to LSU, led the SEC in touchdown receptions. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And even Cam Ward, Miami quarterback. He might be the first quarterback drafted in this draft class. He started his career at Incarnate Word. So,
and famously, Malik Neighbors was a throw-in recruit, I think, at the last minute, and ended up being the best of all those receivers that they brought in.
Foster Moreau was kind of like that too. He was a guy that.
Oh man, his recruiting story is great.
Yeah. So.
Then again, you've got a guy like Travis Hunter, who was the #1 recruit in the country, gets signed to Jackson State, and everybody goes, oh, he's just doing that because he's at Jackson State, and now we see he's going to win the Heisman most likely at Colorado, too. So they matter, but they don't.
Might be the #1 pick, too.
Yeah, they don't always matter. So interesting show. We decided to go change of pace today. We hope you all liked it. If you did, hit the like button for us, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share the show with your friends, 5-star reviews on the podcast platforms, and all of that. We will be back Friday with a more traditional show. We'll preview Saints-Giants, see if the Saints can keep their very, very, very slim playoff hopes alive for another week. Yeah, like if it was slim last week, you can't even see it from here. For Norman Bell, our producer, Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the Saints Insider.